Hi, my name is Vincent, and today I'm going to show you the Slayer 2 Particle Editor. This is a C XNA 4.0 based particle editor that will allow you to create particle emitters and edit them in real time and save them to a file type that the game can read. So I'm going to go ahead and start over on the particle configuration part of the editor. But before I start, I want to quickly explain variance. So many of the sliders will have something called variance, and all it does is it takes the value there and randomly picks a number between the negative of that value and the positive of that value and adds it to the value it's associated with. So for example, lifespan, its variance will be between 0.1 and 3.9 because of this variance right here. So the particle configuration is meant to be for the emitter and the particles it creates. So for example, maximum particles will be the maximum amount the emitter is allowed to have on screen at any one time. So for example, if we bump this up to 1,000, the emitter is now going to emit up to 1,000 particles, and if we drop this down to, let's say, 1, it's only ever going to emit as long as there's no other particles on the screen. So let's go ahead and bump that back up. Alright, next we have lifespan. So this is how long the particle is going to last in seconds. So for example, we have 2 seconds right now. If we wanted it to last closer to 0.4 seconds, we could do that. And we can make the variance so it'll last anywhere between 0.4 seconds and 10 seconds. We don't know. That's what the variance will do. So next we have start size. So this is how large it'll be when it is created. So now 70 is just a number. You can play around with this setting to see kind of what you want. So for example, this is a very small fire, or this is a very large fire. You can start playing around with those numbers, and the end size is the same thing. It's how small it'll be whenever it's about to be finished, whenever the particle is about to die and get deleted. Next we have the emitter's angle. So this is the direction that the emitter is going to be outputting at. So right now it's 270 degrees. That's upwards, as you can see. So this is the center, this is upwards. If we decided we wanted it to shoot downwards, we could bring it down to around 90 degrees, like this right here, and it'd be emitting downwards. And then we can add a little variance on that, and let's say we want it to vary 360 by 360 degrees. So now it'll emit at just about any angle. Even though the angle is set to 95 degrees, it'll be outputting anywhere because of the variance. So rotation and end rotation. That's the rotation it starts at and the rotation it ends at before when a particle is created and then dies. Now you won't see much with this texture because it is a circle, but if it was, for example, a square, you could see that the square is rotating based off these values. So I'm just going to skip over that for now. Next we have gravity configuration and radial configuration. Now there's two types of emitters. There's a gravity, which is what is currently being shown, and a radial. So if you click on this combo box over here next to emitter type, you can see the two different types. So this is an example of a radial emitter for the current settings we have. Now I'm going to just start off with gravity, and I'll move back to radial. So this is our gravity emitter. What X variance does is it's the variance between the X position from the origin. So if we have an X variance of 340, what it'll do is between negative 340 and positive 340 X position from the origin of the emitter, it can create a particle. So let's just move that to the center. This is an example of the emitter going downwards. Now if we add some Y variance, we can do the same thing. So now it's emitting anywhere between negative 341 to positive 341X and negative 336Y and positive 336Y based off the origin, which is roughly the center. Then we have speed. So speed is just how fast the particle is moving in pixels, not in feet, meters, or any other unit of measurement. This is in pixels. So if we decrease it, our particle emitter is going to be moving very slowly. If we increase it, it's going to be going very quickly. You can mess around with that to get your particles moving however fast you want. Then we have its variance as well. So even though it's 100, we can have it occasionally going fast and occasionally going slow. And notice how the speed going in a negative direction based off the variance can cause it to go in this direction even though it's shooting downwards. Next we have gravity. So unlike conventional gravity, which gravitates towards a center, which is for us like negative 9.8 meters per second squared, this will allow you to go in any direction you want. So if we want our gravity to be going that to the right, and let's say up, so even though our emitter is shooting downwards, it's going to the top right. You have full reign over gravity. So let's put that back to roughly 0. Next we have tangential and radial acceleration. I'm not going to go ahead and explain those because they're a little bit more complicated, but think of it like this. Tangential acceleration is involved with rotation. So if we make it 500, or for example negative 500, we'll see it rotate around its origin. Now if we have radial acceleration, radial, if we increase it, it's outwards. Decrease it, it's inwards. So you can have fun messing around with those settings. And when you combine settings, you can create some really cool effects, as you'll see shortly. So let's go ahead and go back to radial emitters. So here's a radial emitter. This is our fire. It's pretty boring when it's radial, but what if we start adding some radius and some minimum radius and maybe some degree variance? We can start creating some really interesting effects that rotate around an origin. So that's what radial emitters do. I'm going to go ahead and switch it off of radial for now before this starts hurting anyone's eyes, but let it be known that you can do some interesting things. Alright, so next we have the color configuration and color variance configuration. This is just as simple as it sounds. It's the start and end RGBA values for the emitter. So right now it's going from red to a yellowish orange. Let's say we wanted it to go from blue to yellowish orange. We would just move these sliders over, and now we can see that it's going from blue to yellowish orange. Now that's just with the colors. We can mess with those all we want, but let's say we wanted it to randomly variate as well. So let's say we wanted it to kind of randomly vary between almost like a rainbow color. Even though our color is set to blue, like we see here, it's going to vary the RGB values by these amounts here. So we can create this interesting color fire. So next we have blending, as well as the emitter type, as you've already seen. So sort mode is what XNA refers to as sprite sort mode, if you've messed with it before. So this is how it draws, the order of which it draws. So currently it's back to front based off depth. Now let's say if we wanted to do deferred, we could see what it would look like as if it was drawing it deferred or immediate. So we can see immediate. Now blend type is what XNA also calls blend state. So alpha blending, additive, non-premultiplied, opaque. We could see these settings in action. So if you just click through them, you can see what they might look like in those particular settings. Next we have the emitter's lifespan and whether or not it's infinite. So currently this emitter is considered infinite, as you can see here. What infinite means is that it will never die. It'll just constantly emit particles based off the settings it has. Now if we wanted our effect to only last 2 seconds, an infinite emitter is not exactly very useful. So this checkbox right here will allow you to do that. If you uncheck it, it'll run the duration of its lifespan, which is right here, and whenever it runs out of lifespan, it'll stop emitting. Once all of its particles created are dead, it'll recreate itself so that way you can see it looping. This is very useful if you want to create something like an explosion, which may only last half a second, and you want to see what it would look like in your game. This editor will allow you to do that. Next we have textures. Now, white circles, they're great, but what if you wanted it to be a square, a star, or any odd shape that you can come up with? The editor will allow you to do that. So if you look over here at this load texture button, we can click on it, find example texture, so I have a square right here, and now the emitter is going to emit squares instead. This isn't very useful. Let's go ahead and resize this a little bigger. Alright, so now it's outputting squares. I know it's a little hard to see, so let me get there we go. I'm going to turn off this variance, but you can see, so now it's using a square. You can use any image you want as long as it's a PNG. Next we also have saving and loading the emitter. This is very important. Let's say this is the effect we want. We could save it, so I'm going to go ahead and use it right here. So now we've saved it. And at any point now, we can reopen up the editor, load it, and it'll run just fine as if we had never left it. So I'm going to click randomize, get some cool effects. You can find some really awesome things with this. But let's say this is the effect we were working on. Now we're done with it, and we want to reopen up the one we just created. So now, whenever that emitter dies, it'll start emitting our old one. It'll move all the settings back to as if we had never left it, and you can continue working on your effect. So that's all I have to show with this particle emitter. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to take what you create in this editor and put it into your XNA game with my particle system. So until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.